Strange Bedfellows Part 1 is the 24th episode of the 4th season of Cheers. This is directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode. This is actually the first of 3 parts, and these 3 episodes will take us up to the finale of season 4. And I obviously won't spoil anything that happens in the 2nd and 3rd part, but I will discuss this episode in quite a bit of detail. And there are some really good moments in it, and one really heartbreaking moment, and also one bit of really terrible editing. But I don't know if this is just on Amazon Prime, so if anybody's watching this elsewhere, either streaming it elsewhere or watching the DVD version, I'd love to know if this bit of bad editing is also in that version. It is towards the very end, so I'll explain it when I get there. So we start off with actually, a strange moment, as quite excitingly we have Mike Hagerty, who plays Trigger in Friends, arm wrestling Woody here, and that's quite delightful, really fun way to start things off. But interestingly, the character on IMDb is listed as Decker, but Woody calls him Mike, his real name of course being Mike Hagerty. And I'm wondering if they changed it, but he was originally meant to be called Decker. Did Woody Harrelson accidentally call him Mike and they kept it in? I have no idea. If anybody's got access to the original script, I'd love to know what it says. But either way, really fun introduction. Carla teaches Woody what she calls Italian arm wrestling. It's a nice way to start things off. And then things turn down a notch in lightheartedness as Frasier reveals that it's the 1-year anniversary of Diane leaving him at the altar. And Frasier's behaviour in this episode is really fascinating, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. We then have a bit of back and forth with Cliff and Norm. Norm says a line that I really thoroughly enjoyed, and he says, "Cliffy, we've had every conversation before," which I just thought felt very realistic and very believable. And then we meet a couple of other characters very briefly. Characters called Brian, played by Brad Burlingame, and April, played by Carolyn and Clark. And they both come into Cheers at the same time with Sam and Diane, their respective dates. And they end up almost engaging in competitive kissing and trying to one-up the other. They're behaving like children, which I think is pretty much the exact current state of Sam and Diane's relationship. We then meet Councillor Janet Eldridge. She's played by Kate Mulgrew, and she's stopping off at Cheers on her political campaign, and it turns out she was already a fan of Mayday Malone, which is definitely something that Sam is very happy about. And Sam is showing support for Councillor Eldridge, so Diane decides to campaign for her opposition, Jim Fleener, played by Max Wright. I don't know if it's 100% the case that Diane was campaigning for Fleener because she fully believed in his principles. I believe that would be the case. I don't think Diane would help campaign for somebody if she didn't believe in what they were supporting. But at the same time, I feel like she's doing it to get back at Sam for everything, really. And Frasier says that he will help her, and he goes off on this mini speech about how he really wants to support Fleener and he completely backs everything. And then when Diane is out of the frame, out of the shot, Frasier admits he has no idea who Fleener is. And I think that that's really telling about the fact that Frasier is still caught up on Diane. Frasier is still not over that. Maybe his emotions have stirred a bit because it's the 1-year anniversary, but I think it's pretty clear to say that he's not fully over Diane. We get a little bit of the campaigning with Janet, and then Sam asks her out, and she declines. But then very quickly after that, we see that she has slipped her private number to Sam. Cut to a little bit later, we learn that Sam has already been out with her, and as Carla boasts... Can you boast on behalf of somebody else? Possibly. Either way, Carla is winding up Diane about the fact that Sam is going out with Janet yet again, and they're going in a limousine, and it's all fancy, and Sam then comes out in his tuxedo and he looks very dashing. He looks very dapper. And Diane talks to Carla and confesses to Carla that she's worried that Sam is going to get hurt because she's convinced that Janet is just using Mayday Malone as part of her political campaign. And Carla's certain that this is not the case. So Carla approaches Sam. And this is an uncomfortable moment. It's really uncomfortable because it's rare that Sam will not like anything Carla has said. And Carla says something basically about how Sam's screwing the politician after everything politicians have done to screw people over. And Sam just says, no, that's not nice, don't say that. And I think Carla realised in that moment that actually Sam might be falling for this woman. And for us as viewers, that's definitely an indication that this might mean more to Sam than just a casual fling. And Diane then approaches Janet, who happens to be in Sam's office at that point, and Janet does admit, initially, she admits that she did want to use Sam. That was her initial intention. Doesn't make her seem like a very nice person. But then she admits that actually she now sees something special in Sam. And on the one hand, I want to like that, because Sam is clearly falling for her, and Janet, if she falls for him, it could be a beautiful relationship, and I want Sam to be happy. But at the same time, she is saying those words to Diane, and I want Diane to be with Sam. And it's an uncomfortable situation to be in, because is it possible to be happy for Sam, but also feel unhappy for Diane? It's very awkward, but I believe that's what we're meant to be feeling, because it's great to see Sam happy. Janet admitted she's actually falling for Sam. Well, maybe not quite as strongly as that, but she certainly sees something in him that she likes, and two people liking each other, that's a beautiful thing when it's reciprocated, but not at the expense of Diane Chambers' feelings. And then we cut to the final scene, and this is where things get a little bit emotional and also badly edited, at least on Prime. It's the end of the campaign. Janet is on TV with Sam. She's won the election. They're all very happy. Frasier comes into the room and tells Fleener, do you know you're out of liquor? And that's the moment where Diane's face looks kind of aghast. She's in disbelief that this is what Frasier is saying. And she turns her head, and then it cuts to Diane looking pensive. And it's just a terrible bit of editing. It doesn't make any sense. It's like there's something missing. Like Diane said something, and then we would have had to have had a couple of seconds to get to that point where Diane has turned her head to look at Frasier and then is looking down, looking pensive. And this is at 22 minutes and 55 seconds. That's on Paramount, on Amazon Prime, and I'd love to know if it's different in the DVD version, or if you're streaming elsewhere, or indeed if you're streaming directly on Paramount. Is there something missing? Because it doesn't make any sense. There is definitely something missing there, because the cut doesn't make sense from 1 second to the next. So I'm very keen to find out what has happened there. We then move on from that, and Fleener tells Diane, that was my last chance. Looks like I blew it. And Diane, still looking down, says to herself, really, me too. And that's heartbreaking, because she now realises that if Sam and Janet fall for each other, she's lost her chance with Sam. And what's also really important about this is that by saying me too, she's saying I also blew it. Diane is taking the blame. And Diane basically never does that. And I think that that's really telling about how she feels about this situation, that she's almost starting to blame herself for what could have been. And that's, on the one hand, that's a very dark place to be. At the same time, I think it shows a level of maturity about this relationship that really neither character has displayed before. And obviously, it is heartbreaking to think that Diane has lost her chance to be with the person, whether she'd admit it or not, the person she loves the most. And of course, we have 2 more parts to this story, and I won't say what happens next. I know what happens next, but I will keep stum for the moment. But I think this is a brilliant episode. It's got a lot to offer, and great cast, great performances, really interesting characters, but ultimately leaving it on quite a heartbreaking note. But I'll say no more. I'm looking forward to rewatching the other 2. If anybody does have access to a different version of this episode, please do let me know. If the cut obviously if there are bits missing, then the cut might be a slightly different time, but it happens at 22 minutes and 55 seconds on Amazon Prime, so it'll be around about there, and I'd love to know if anything is missing. If anything is missing, please, if you can, even just record those couple of seconds on your phone and email me the file. I'd love to see it if anything is missing. But for now, I'm very happy to have watched Strange Bedfellows Part 1, and I'm looking forward to rewatching Part 2 and 3.